Nice. You are live. So I guess that my Instagram should be live.
Yeah, mine should be going here in a second.
Hello, all.
Here we go. Live on this side on Instagram. Cool. We got some people coming in. What's going on, everybody?
Hello,
I
hello,
hope
hello.
all is well. We have Ab here with us today. We're gonna wait a couple of minutes to let everybody kind of get in. Chime in the comments and let me know where you guys are joining us from.
And thank you for having me today, Andrew. Excited
Yeah,
to get into this.
I appreciate it, man. Like always. We've had the opportunity to chat quite a bit here over the past couple of months, and even more so over the past couple of weeks. And I'm excited for the people to get to know more about you. Emily, what's going on? Eric, what's going on?
Hello, 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 everybody. Still trying to get it live on my Instagram. Should be 2 seconds.
Maurice, Alexis, what's happening? Alexis, yes, I will be in Dallas in like 2 weeks. I was literally just talking about that. So I will be in Dallas in 2 weeks. I hope you plan on coming out to come see us. Tim, what's up, Tim? How's it going, bro? Sophia, we got some St. Louis people in here. Oh, that's Sophia. St. Louis. Am I right, Sophia? Are we talking about the same person? Tell Ariel I said, what's happening? Donna Maria, what's going on? From
Donna
Maryland.
Maria, what's up?
Send me some crab cakes from up there.
Another amazing photographer.
Let's see. Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and dive in and get started. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I want to introduce you all if you're not familiar with Ab. Um, Ab, I first came across, like many other photographers, I came across Ab on YouTube, and I was watching a lot of the content that he had there. And then this past January at Imaging,
Hmm.
I was just finished the talk, and there was a photographer. She and I were speaking, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see this speaker, AB something. Like I don't know who it is." And I was like, "Oh, I know who you're talking about." So then later on that day, he and I ended up running into each other inside of the elevator, and just kind of chopping it up, getting to know one another. And I spoke with him about how much I enjoyed all the content that he created. So
Thank
at
you.
that point I put the wheels in motion to get him to join us at the Bokeh Photo Summit coming up here in August. So we're excited to have you, man. Thank you for being able to make the time to come out. And so
Thank you for
tell
having me.
no problem, man. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, like how you ended up getting started. I've read the full bio. We've had many chats, so I know all of the complexities of apps. So tell the people a little bit about yourself, man.
Well, I'll give people the short answer. I started out in computer science. From computer science, I graduated to graphic design. From graphic design, I wanted to start doing my own photography. So I started doing my own photography for graphic design, at which then point I fell in love with photography. And I actually started doing like a lot of documentary photography, shooting a lot of black and white, developing and processing my own film, spending a lot of time in the dark room, which I enjoyed very much. And on the side, still shooting a lot of commercial jobs.
Nice.
Even for my senior thesis, I didn't want to write the paper, so I told one of my professors that I would, who's retired now, so I can tell the story, that I would do photography of their artwork in order to not have to actually write a thesis paper. Because at that time I was
Mm.
already working basically full time at the Mac Group.
Oh
Um,
wow. Okay.
So I've just never, once I got started, I kind of never stopped. And for me, there really is no, I always like to say there is no plan B. Plan A is always just making photography work, period.
Right. I feel you, man. I mean, it's kind of the mentality that you have to have in order to remain focused so that you can be
100%.
successful on what it is that you're doing. Like too many options, it just kind of gives you that spirit of being able to give up, so to speak. So I definitely kind of appreciate that. Now, you say that working full time at the Mac Group. Tell the people just a little bit about Mac Group. Even over the past couple of years, I've learned all of the complexities, right? But
Mhm.
then I ended up finding out that you work with the Mac Group, but you have very specific and strategic roles across a number of the companies there. Tell us about that a little bit.
So what Mac Group is they're a distributor, but they also do distribution, sales, and marketing, kind of under one roof. So a company, let's say Nanlite, will come to a company like Mac Group, and those be like in the United States. We want you guys to take care of marketing our product, distributing our product, and managing the sales channel. And so under that umbrella, I'm kind of in charge of all the content. So for let's say for a brand like Saconic or Benro, we will do everything from like the product photography to developing content plans, managing the YouTube channels, interacting with other members of the marketing team who are working on building out the websites and creating POP materials for dealers. So I'd really consider. I used to call myself kind of executive producer slash creative director,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe now that role is morphed more into creative producer, in which every project has a budget, a timeline, and creative. And my job is getting all those things to marry. But on the side, I also kind of run my own production company and do a lot of freelance photography projects as well. And both inform the other.
Nice, nice. And which is really cool because again, I've had the pleasure of seeing a lot of your work. And if you guys haven't seen it, definitely go check out Ab's Instagram. And he has it right there up under
Thank you.
his name. Go check him out, give him a follow, right? And but I love your work. I love the use of light.
Thank you.
Um, the soft light stuff, the hard light stuff. You get very creative with it. I am a fan of light and just being able to manipulate light.
Hmm.
And when I got the opportunity to see like the depth that you create across the vast variety of genres of photography, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come out, right?
Hmm.
And you're actually going to be speaking about hard light at
Absolutely.
the Bokeh Photo Summit, which a lot of people are extremely scared of. Now, chime in the comments, guys, if you are one of those people that are scared of hard light, because one, abs class is just going to be fantastic, right?
We're
But
to knock it out.
yeah, right. Gonna knock it out. Show the people some ways to be able to manipulate. Even the video that you sent me about using the one light source, the one umbrella, shooting 100 different shots, right, across a talk where every shot was usable, right? When
Mhm.
we think about that, it's like the magnitude of I'm going to shoot 100 consecutive shots that are all 100% usable, manipulating the light along the way, right? Like
Mhm.
that's pretty big. That's pretty heavy, especially for those people who are just not comfortable with light. So if you guys have fears um about hard light, drop them in the comments. Let's just ask Ab some questions about those particular lighting situations. And in the meantime, we'll just have you dive in and just talk about hard light and what your plans are to kind of tell the people once you're here down in Atlanta.
So I think that you should never start out saying you're scared of something that's not going to kill you,
No, true that.
or that you generally don't have a phobia of. Right. So if you don't have a phobia and it's not going to kill you and it's not going to kill somebody else, then you should have zero fears. And when it comes to hard light, everybody loves that beautiful light during like a sunset, right? And that light is often very, very hard. And some, I don't know if all, we all have magical moments inside of that light. and everybody looks wonderful in it. No one's scared of that. Um, when people talk about hard light, I feel as if though they want the light to be flattering, and I think that people need to change the mindset and think about like what lighting is appropriate. And when you think about what light is going to be appropriate for a situation, then sometimes necessarily it doesn't need to be flattering if it's expected and it's right. I mean, think about cinematic lighting in which they use like a lot of hard light to communicate things. And I think that in the let's say the wedding portrait world specifically, I think it's very, very client driven oftentimes, and you always want to make sure that your client is as flattered as humanly possible by the light. And I think any light source can make someone look unflattering. And I think hard light can make somebody look more unflattering or look worse than, let's say, a similarly used soft light, which could still make someone look, can be very unflattering on someone.
Right.
But I feel like the name hard is what makes people think that it's hard. I think that there's something going on there in psychology where as soon as someone sees hard light, it's like, okay, hard to use light, soft light, easy to use, and I think simply looking at the direction of light, the angle of light, the color of light, you don't need to have really clean skin always to use hard light. There's oftentimes the angle that you put the light at relative to the angle of the camera makes a huge difference. And all these factors boil into whether or not your light's going to be flattering or not, and whether or not hard light is appropriate or not. And I think that a lot of times people when they're lighting, I feel as if though they're just trying to illuminate a scene. Um versus, let's say, light a scene and having a point of view on what you want the lighting to do. And I think once you get over the hump, not of understanding lighting, but what you want it to look like, and then how to manipulate light to do that, then I think everything changes. And I think the greatest weapon a photographer can have is a point of view. If you go into it and you're only going based upon the point of view of your client who may not understand the science of what you need to produce, then sometimes there could be a clashing of heads and this job can get very difficult, you know? But some of the most beautiful pictures out there are taken with hard light, you know?
Definitely. I mean, I play with a mixture of like, now granted everybody knows I'm primarily, known as a wedding photographer, right? But I
Mhm,
play with a variety of different styles of light. I love soft light. I love
mhm,
hard light in, situations whether that's in studio. But also, I mean, you see I shoot on location a lot. So places like Dubai where the sun is beaming at 9 in the morning, right?
nice.
Being able to go in and capture great photos in that situation,
Mhm,
whether you're using the light as like a key so that you can get something that's like hard and fashiony,
mhm,
or something that's going to give you a nice rim into like a silhouette or something like that.
mhm,
Again, like you said, I think most people look at it and hear hard light and just automatically assume that this is gonna be hard.
mhm,
So one question, actually, Layla Bailey, who she chimed in on Instagram, so we can't see the comments here. She
mhm,
said that your video on hard light encouraged her to use the silver parabolic umbrella, and she loves it. It's fun to use. So, again, if you haven't seen any of Ab's work, go look at his Instagram. Go check out his content. He creates a lot of content for the Adorama YouTube channel, but then he just recently launched his channel as well, where he'll be sharing some things there. Now, Jenny over on Instagram, she's asking
mhm,
for tips for hard light on wedding day.
mhm,
She says she's having more and more outdoor weddings at about 3 p.m. Now, Jenny, is this just for like portraits, or are you talking about ceremony specific? But in the meantime, I'll let you kind of touch on that really quick.
So I've shot a total of about 3 weddings in my entire life.
Mhm.
So for me to give accurate advice on what to do specifically on a wedding day would be somewhat disingenuous. But what I would say is if I'm shooting in midday sun, one of the things that I really look for is the contrast between the light hitting someone's forehead and their eyes. And oftentimes I want to find a place where there's shadows, whether it's under a tree, under an awning, um, under a tent, where I'm going to be able to get balanced light in someone's eyes as well as on their forehead so that they don't have raccoon eyes. And if it's a situation in which I'm able to light, it may be simply using fill flash, and the lighting will be very matter of fact and may not be extremely beautiful. But if it's a situation in which I'm able to light, I would try to shade the direct sun from the top, scattering a bit or diffusing it a bit, and possibly adding in a little bit of fill flash. But again, not shooting weddings, and hopefully shooting weddings is something I never have to do again in my life. Um, I don't want to give you an answer as if it's coming from a place of great experience. I know Andre has shot way more weddings than I have in my entire life. And I'm not sure how you would touch on that.
So with me, on one of the things that on wedding day we understand that things are very fast paced, things are
Mhm,
moving, right? You kind of just gotta go with the flow. The benefit of what we have now, especially with these DSLR, not DSLRs, but with these mirrorless cameras, is you can look at the back of your screen and figure out exactly what is happening in that moment, right?
mhm,
With DSLR, I used to cheat. I used to put the camera on video mode really
mhm,
quickly so I can use the live view, even though it wasn't, like how it is now,
mhm,
and that's how I would quickly get to my settings. But while you're while we have the advantage of being able to do that, I would encourage you to put the couple in the scene, look at the back of the LCD screen, dial in the settings to where the exposure is correct, right? They're
mhm,
where they're correctly exposed, and see what you get. You may find that you're getting a different result than what you think you're going to get. So,
mhm,
and that only really takes a couple seconds to do. Typically I'm walking into a scene, dialing in my settings so that by the time we get there, I already know what it is that I can or cannot do. So, um again, I would just say, while you're in that scene, look at the back of your camera, figure out, what it looks like, and, take a couple of shots, see if you can make it work. And then if you can't, dissect those images so then the next time you're going into a similar situation on wedding day, you have a little bit more insight of what's possible and what's not possible.
mhm. Yeah, I love lighting questions, and I think that one of the things I always do to light a scene is I try to put a complete sentence in my head of what I'm trying to accomplish. Because it really helps me. I feel like on set, one of the strongest things you can do is compartmentalize like exactly what you're going for. And instead of tackling many problems at one time, tackling one thing at a time. And if I'm lighting a scene, I'll tell myself, okay, I want to fill in the person's eyes. Am I going to change the direction of their head, or am I going to add light? Okay, got that. Next, I want to separate from them from the background a little bit more. Am I going to do it on a lens with aperture, or am I going to do it with lighting and possibly add a rim light or change what my background looks like? Okay, I have 3 different options. Which am I going to choose? I'm going to choose this one next. Now let me focus on composition. And I feel like instead of like having all these voices in your head, I try to focus on one thing at a time. And that's one of the best ways I think to like build up lighting. It's kind of compartmentalize every little problem or situation you have to deal with, and then solve 'em one by one instead of trying to solve 10 things at once. I think it's hugely beneficial.
100%. It's like with, when you're in the studio lighting situation, the
Hmm.
worst thing you can do is have all of your lights on one time and try to dial in each one of those lights to be specifically what it is that you want it to be. You know,
Hmm.
Typically I start from the back forward. So depending on what my lighting setup is, or start with the hair lights, the rim lights, and then work my way forward to illuminating my subject.
Hmm.
Um, and so that way I can see exactly what each light is doing inside of the scene. um and that's my typical strategy. I know some people that start from the front going back, right?
That would be
um
me.
yeah,
I would always recommend starting from the front.
you go to the from the front to the back. Yeah, see, I start from the back to the front, so then that way I can see what the highlights and in the hairs and stuff like that are doing.
Hmm.
If I'm throwing gels, I want those gels to look a particular way, and then I dial in my subject from there. So as you can see, guys, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
100%.
I would most definitely say Ab is a lot more of a lighting expert than I am. So, definitely chime in with those questions so that we can see. So, we do have a few over here.
Hmm.
Let's see. Lynette is asking, what are some trends related to hard light?
So trends related to hard light. One trend oftentimes is flash on camera, where
Yep.
you'll see someone put a flash directly on top of their camera, and oftentimes that's going to be very, very hard light, just because it's a small light source. It's oftentimes a very direct light source. Using a ring light a ring light's a very hard light, but it gets this the things that make light hard are its relative size to your subject. It's how perpendicular the light rays are. Meaning, if you have a spotlight that's still very, very close to your subject, it's still going to have a lot of very hard qualities due to the fact that the 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 light is so focused. And all the people I know who are scared of hard light, everybody loves using a spotlight, right? A spotlight is as hard of a light source as you can get,
Right.
but it's appropriate for what you're doing, so you're no longer scared of it. I think that what's that say that term? Your subconscious doesn't know when you're lying sometimes. And if you continue to say something is hard, again, if it doesn't kill you or hurt you, then don't think of it as being that difficult. There's always a way.
Back to Instagram.
Mhm.
Rice photo. He says, or looks like yep. I got humbled outdoors this past weekend with the changing sun and cloud conditions. Any tips for
Mhm.
balancing ambient and flash for outdoor portraits?
Yes. So when light is changing a lot outdoors, it can be extremely difficult.
Right.
And what I do personally is I will meter when there's a cloud in front of the sun, and I will take a meter reading when there's very direct light. And if I see a cloud happening, I'll quickly change my settings. If I see the sun coming out, I'll quickly change my settings. If I know that, well, I'm just looking for direct sunlight, sometimes I'll wait for the cloud to pass. And oftentimes, so let's say if it's a sunrise or sunset shoot, I feel like then I'm really chasing the light, and I'm not going to spend 10 minutes waiting for a cloud to pass. I know that I just may have to change because I'm losing light or gaining light at the same time. If it's the midday, I may just wait for the cloud to pass in order to get the lighting that I want. Again, and I'll communicate it to my team and my subject, and I'll just say, hey, we have a cloud. I think it's going to pass in 10 minutes. Let's just wait for it because I want the lighting to look like X. And then
Right.
everybody will be on board. If I don't have the luxury for that, I'll quickly remeter, quickly adjust my settings, and be right back in the shooting. And another way to answer that question as well, another solution is if I know that the light's going to be changing a lot outside, I may put myself in a situation where a person's back is to the sun and my light that's doing most of the work, your key light is kind of what's describing your subject and giving your overall mood. I'll make sure that that is the driver of whatever I'm shooting. So that even if I get a cloud or if the backlights change, it's not completely changing my image, you know? But there are times where if you're going for that beautiful bright sunlight look and you get a cloud, you got to wait for it. Again, base the decision on aesthetically what you're going for, not always feeling the need to just take a photograph, because I think if you take your time and take 10 really good photos, which I was trying to demonstrate in that Adorama shoot where I was only taking about 10 exposures per lighting look. At the end of the day, if I take my time and shoot 100 photos versus shooting 500 photos where only 100 are usable, it still at the end of the day gives us the same amount of usable images. So I think take some of the pressure off yourself and just say, look, from this look I need to get 5 hero images. I can wait it out.
Right. And I talk about that a lot in that I am a meticulous shooter. I hear wedding photographers like, oh, yeah, I took 10,000 images at this wedding. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what? 10,000 images, 30,000 images. I had an Indian wedding years ago where we were doing
Mhm.
video, and the photographer day one of an 8-day wedding took 30,000 images. And I'm like, how do you get 30,000 images?
Mhm.
Until the ceremony, I heard him. He was like Rambo. I'm like, oh my God. Like, you do know that you have to call these images, right?
Mhm.
Down to whatever it is that you're going to deliver. But be meticulous. Take your time in order to be able to get the shots that you want, just not spraying and praying, as they say. Let's go into Maurice's question because it
Mhm.
seems to fit. So he said, is there an order of operations you go through to get your light where you want to bring an idea to life?
Is there an order opera? This is a very, very, very good question. I would say the first thing is I need to have a vision in my head of what I want the lighting to look like. Um, and then once I have that, I look at, okay, what tools do I have at my disposal in order to accomplish that? And then I ask myself, what's realistic? I think sometimes people try to light themselves, they're trying to solve a problem with lighting that you just can't solve given the tools that you have. And I think you have to be very, very realistic to solve the problem with the given tools that you have in your arsenal. Um, then I approach it with, okay, what is my main light going to be? And at the end of the day, and Andre, this is one of the reasons I start from the front. I want to make sure that my main light could carry the entire photograph if I needed it to, so that I still have beautiful results just given what my main light is. And my main light is going to describe my subject, whether I want them to be lit dramatically, whether I want them to be lit, large and soft. And then I'll start adding on to that based upon like what my vision is and kind of like seasoning around it. But like if this was cooking, my main light is the protein. It is the main course on the plate, and I'm going to build everything around that. I'm not thinking about the French fries first. I'm thinking about, you know, and what is it? Am I going to have a burger? Maybe I want onion rings, or I want fried cauliflower strips, or something. Everything is. But I would also say you have to find your comfort zone as a photographer. Um, I think when you practice, like the one thing photographers don't do enough of is working out. Everybody kind of saves the time to work out based upon doing the actual job, I feel like that's when you should execute. I feel like you should be in the studio practicing the same way someone goes to the gym. I mean, look at boxers, for instance. Boxers can box, right? But before a fight, all of them train. They want to there's things that they forgot. Um, there are certain techniques they may need to brush up on based upon who they're going to face. They may need to have a different strategy. Like if I know I'm going to be doing an entire shoot lighting on location, I may go out the day before and just be like, you know what? I really like when there's, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio between like the eyes and like the forehead, or where's the sun position this time of year? Okay, I think the best time to shoot would be, 2 o'clock versus 5 o'clock, or 5 o'clock versus 2 o'clock. Um, do everything you can do to get things on your side. And I don't think photographers that I talk to practice enough. And I am constantly, 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 constantly practicing. Because I have a quote from, there's a, I'm rereading Light Science and Magic, which I think is a very important book to learn and understand lighting. And the more I learn about lighting, the more I can appreciate and understand different parts of the book that before were coming across as somewhat esoteric. And in there, they say the more you can accomplish with your head is less work you have to do with your hands. And I find a lot of photographers doing a lot of work with their hands and not a lot of work with your head. And the difficulty is when you work with your hands, you're going to get tired. At some point, it's going to kick in and your hands are going to slow down. Where I find my mind, I can pretty much keep it in working at the same speed all day. My body, not so much. There gets to a point where it's, after 10, 12 hours, you just ain't moving as fast as you were in the morning.
I mean, that takes us back to, work smarter, not harder, right? You
100%.
know, so nobody's asked this, but now I'm curious. Do you use apps like Sunseeker? For us as photographers, especially
Absolutely.
when I go on location, right? I'm in a different country. I want to know what things are like. I'm out there with the Sunseeker app trying to figure out where the sun is going to be at the time I plan to shoot, and just kind of planning ahead for what could possibly happen during the shoot.
100%. Because in many situations, you just can't fight against the sun.
Right.
And you don't want to turn your shoot into having to fight the sun. You want to predict where it's at. You want the sun to be your friend. You want to work with it. But the sun is just so bright. Knowing where it's at, or even on a cloudy day. And I find photographers make on a cloudy day, you think, oh, the light's very dispersed. It's coming from everywhere. It'll still have a direction depending on where the sun is. And I'll still think of positioning my subject so that, the sun is frontal to them if it's on a very soft day. And you'll find you'll get much better results doing that. So I love Sunseeker. When I'm on set, I make sure I mention it with new assistants so they understand where it's at. But I think it's hugely important. It's a great tool.
Yeah, 100%. Like we use it a lot. Um, it- Again, I do a lot of destination stuff, whether
Mhm.
that's wedding or engagement. And if you've never been to a location, right, or especially when you start looking at different time zones or whatever, like you want to know what that light is gonna end up looking like. So if you aren't using that, I encourage you guys to do so.
Yeah, that
Um,
that mixed with a weather app.
Oh, with the weather app. Yeah, see, I never do that. My buddy Brian, he does that. He's like watching the radar with the forecast to
Yep.
see what's going on, see what the clouds are doing. That's something that I have not personally introduced into my arsenal yet.
And it depends on where you shoot. I remember I was shooting in Miami. I've done about maybe about 6 or 7 different shoots in Miami. And it can start pouring rain. The next minute it's beautiful.
Right.
And,
Perfect.
predicting whether or not you're gonna wrap it or not really depends on if you think that, "Hey, we just gotta wait this out for an hour and then come back out and we're good to go," you know?
Right, right. Cool. Let's get into the next one. Eric says he's looking to create some hard light for fashion imagery outside. Should
Mhm.
I use off-camera flash, natural, or the natural light from the sun?
So, I think, golden hour, sunrise, anytime the sun is, kind of low on the horizon, I think it looks beautiful for fashion images. Again, it really depends on what you're going for. I do get a lot of these questions on Instagram where everyone is so, what should I pack for a shoot or how should I light for X? But it really depends on the creative. Like I would, if someone showed me a mood board, they showed me an image, then it makes it really easy to be like, oh, I would execute this way. On camera flash, I love it. Sometimes I should take better advantage of it. I was actually looking for like kind of a new bare bulb on camera flash.
Mm,
I just bought a Pro Media Gear flash bracket. Um, and I'm always, because I was just using on camera flash for like a big group shot of
mhm.
like a bunch of people sitting at like a table in a bar. And I realized that, right now I had the A1, but it wasn't as broad as I would have liked. And I was almost looking for like that old school kind of like quantum Q flash, just bare bulb look. And the only thing I found was like I think Godox, they make a like Wistro 300 or something like that. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll buy one of those.
That
I mean, I
new one,
literally buy everything.
right?
I
That
don't know if
new,
it's, I never heard of it. So it's new to
mm,
me.
got it. Got it. So that takes me into another question, that something that
Mhm,
you and I talked about, and that's gear, right? So I
mhm,
know you have you have a lot of gear. So when it comes down to packing for a shoot, like you said, you
mhm.
want to know like what the final product is gonna look like. But at the end of the day, you do have those people who are minimalists and they make it work, and then you
Yep,
have those people that are like everything, including the kitchen sink.
yep.
Where do you fall in line when you're packing for a shoot?
So I have a great example. I had a shoot for a wellness brand who deals with like a lot of like infrared sauna and heat activated topicals, like skin creams and stuff like that. And I had to do a photo slash video shoot for them. It was over 3 days.
Wow.
And on day one, I packed in my strobes and I packed my a nan light kit.
Mhm.
And the the shoot ended up being so there were so many shots. There wasn't gonna be enough time for me to swap out between strobes and continuous light. It's one of those instances where once we were set with like the scene and the model and we're shooting video, then it's like, okay, after we shoot video, we also need to shoot stills. And I would have much preferred to use strobes because I
Mhm.
feel as if though creatively there's more problems I can solve and there's more different looks I can give. And when it comes to power, I can do certain things on battery versus having to plug in, but the
Right.
time just wasn't there. So I ended up only shooting continuous light for both stills and video. Good news is the stills pretty much exactly match the aesthetic of the video.
Right.
Um, Bad news, there were some situations I was in a bathroom that had like an overhead skylight. And it was funny. We were actually shooting in Russell Simmons' old apartment in Manhattan, and
Oh,
there's this
okay.
huge bathroom with this gorgeous skylight. And I just didn't have enough punch coming from the nan lights, and they were doing construction, so I couldn't cover it up. But I just dealt with it. And in hindsight, if I brought a 4x4 flag with me, maybe I would have been able to just quickly knock that out. To answer that question is how I pack things out. But again, I kind of think about, okay, what lighting kit is gonna solve the problem of whatever the aesthetic needs to be for this shoot. And then if I have the luxury, sometimes it's like, okay, now I want to bring 10 or 20 lights because I could set up different scenes and have everything running at the same time.
Right.
So I would say the first thing I look is I'm basing the kit based upon, well, first, are there any travel things I need to consider? Because sometimes some kits are just too big. So it's like, okay, I need to fit everything inside of an SUV. Check. Next, it's like, okay, what lights am I going to bring? These are lights I'm going to bring. Check. If I bring these lights, that means I have to bring these stands. Okay, check. And if I bring these lights, okay, I need this many extension cords. Check. Or I need this many batteries. Check. So it really depends on the problem I have to solve. And then, looking at the creative part, but then also looking at the logistical part. One of the things I love working in the studio is that's one thing I don't have to consider as much.
Right.
It's all there ready to go.
Right. Definitely. Like, so even with me with trekking through, the world, all the locations are gonna be different. Like
Mhm.
you don't want to be lugging a bunch of gear through the deserts of Dubai or throughout the crazy terrain of
Can
Iceland,
imagine.
right? That if you've ever been walking in the desert, that sand is no joke. Every step is like 10, right? You're sinking. So I definitely don't want to be out there trying to deal with some rolly bag and a bunch of different lighting situations. I'm
Mhm.
shooting that as natural light and hard light most of the time as humanly possible. But personally, I'm a person, I buy gear out of convenience.
Mhm.
um, I want it to be extremely convenient for me. I don't necessarily care that I have an excess of gear, or I could have taken this and this to solve the same problem. Like
Mhm.
I want to be able to move quickly. Again, my primary genre is weddings, and we have to be able to move quickly and solve problems very quickly, versus turning into MacGyver in a lot of situations. So I'm definitely the person that's gonna buy a bunch of gear for specific situations. Now
100%.
back to Instagram really quick.
Mhm.
Someone was asking if you could mention the name of that book again.
Oh, light science and magic.
Light, Science, and Magic. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
put that in here. Light.
On Amazon, I think it's probably $40, $30. I think
Got
it's an
it.
unbelievable book. I see someone ask a question. How do I feel about the new Profoto 1600D being a cine guy? I have not had a chance to play with it yet. I heard they're announcing it at Cinegear, but I haven't seen anything. And since you know the name, you probably saw it on a rumor site. I didn't even know the name of the light, although I knew
Mhm.
it was coming. So I'm interested to see what Profoto offers. I actually launched Profoto's first cine light back in 2008. They had the Pro Tungsten and the Pro Daylight. And even before then, they had a Pro Daylight, maybe another 10 years before that. So I'm interested, and it was a tungsten based light. So I'm interested to see what it is. I definitely use Profoto a lot of times for still shoots. But again, I'm one of those people where I was even talking to Andre about this, and I'll be very transparent. I don't really want a lighting sponsor. I want to use everything, period. I've worked for more lighting companies than anyone in the industry. I've worked for Profoto, I worked for Broncolor, Bowens, Ellen Chrome.
Oh, yeah.
I've done some stuff for Nanlite, Photix. Like I've worked for a lot of lighting companies, and I want to use all of it. Period. There's certain times where certain tools are just going to make the shoot 1% better. And I've been doing this long enough where sometimes 1% is a lot.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
I always get people think I have a lot of equipment, and so I've been doing this for let's say 24 years to make it easy. Let's say if I buy 2 lights a year for 24 years, or let's say if I buy 5 lights a year for 24 years, and I like buy some, I return some, get others. they just add up. Next thing you know, yeah, you're sitting on like 50 to 100 different lights. Some of my own, some of my are, you know, my company owns. So it just adds up. Sometimes you find unbelievable sales. Like I find stuff on eBay, I'm like a master at it. Like stuff that I'm looking for in particular. So anything that makes me 1% better, anything that saves me any percentage of time, then I want to have access to it because it's what I do. It's like I said, there is no plan B. If I can find a light that's going to make my life easier, I'm going to use it. I'm not going to be dedicated to one brand. If I go to a conference, I want to be able to use like at the Bokeh Academy. There's going to be Nanlight's going to be there, and Westcott's going to be there. I want to be able to show people how to use both of them.
Right.
I want to teach people how to drive no matter what car they own. And then figure out what works best for you based upon price, efficiency, light modifiers. If you need stuff that can get repaired easily, like that's on you.
And I think that's a good segue into Jay Banks's question.
Mhm.
Um, he says there's a growing movement towards continuous light. Which do you prefer, continuous, strobe, and why?
Oh, this is really easy. With When I'm shooting video, I prefer continuous light. Period. Hard stop. If I'm shooting a shoot where video trumps photo, then I'll see if I can make everything work with continuous light. If I am doing a commercial shoot in which I need a huge amount of control and a huge amount of power, nothing compares to strobe. It's funny, I was, Lindsay Adler and Chris Knight, they had asked me a while ago, like the power difference between strobe and continuous light, and I didn't know. And then they came back to me and they're like, yeah, it's about a 5-stop difference if you compare watt seconds to like watts. So I did my own test and I was like, you know what, they're right. There's about a 5-stop difference between, let's say, a 500-watt light and a 500-watt second light. And so now if you go up the chain to a 2400-watt second strobe compared to a 2400-watt LED, and this is dealing in LED, it would be different if it was HMI, it'd be different if it was tungsten. 5 stops is a huge difference,
Awesome.
and if you
Yeah.
need to stop action, it's far easier to light more creatively with strobes than it is with continuous light.
Right.
You have less heat to deal with. You have much smaller lights. Um, but to me, all light is just light. I had to do a shoot this weekend where I had to light about a 10-person group photo for this new theater's opened up in Manhattan, a midnight theater. And I was doing promotional pictures of like a headliner, Brian Newman, and his wife Angie Fontani, and a host of other people. And we brought in a lighting tech who could control all the stage and room lighting, and I was balancing my strobes with the stage lighting and everything that was in the room. So I was using, in that instance, I was using both. I look at all lights as being the same, and some are just better at solving some problems than others, but I continuously use flash and strobes together. I would say if you're a photographer, definitely learn how to use both because you're going to have to use both. Period.
100%. Oh, it's another awesome segue. Uh, Jamel is saying that he's struggling with balancing his Pavo tubes with his FJ 400 on a beauty dish. It seems like the 400 is too powerful, even on the lowest power settings. Should I just go all constant RGB lights, or and not mix the flash with the constants?
So the problem that he's having is true, but ultimately, every constant light has the potential to be brighter than any strobe, because constant lights have the benefit of time. And so, what you may find out, in order to balance your constant lights with your strobe, you may have to just set your shutter speed at a point where your constant lights have more time, and they will balance out better with your strobes. But again, remember, your strobe, if you have let's say a Pavo tube is maybe 60 watts, spread along this long tube. Your FJ400 is 400 watts. So you're already talking about a difference of 60 to 60. So that's 5 stops, 120, 6 stops, 240, 7 stops. And let's rough it out to 400. So you're already probably initially getting hit with an 8-stop difference between your two lights. And making up 8 stops is going to be tough. It means you're going to have to raise your ISO. And, I would start out with, okay, where does your FJ400 bottom out? And then see how much shutter speed you need to bring into the equation in order for your Pavo tube to do anything. And you can always turn the modeling light off on your strobe as well, so that it doesn't affect your scene. But depending on what you're trying to do, those may just be the wrong 2 tools, and that's where it's like, well, what are you trying to get this Pavo tube to do? Could you just bring in a strip softbox and do the same thing, and then your problem solved? Because
Yeah.
if at 1/8 of a second, you may be in a point where it's just like, well, I can't shoot this at 1/8 of a second, so I need to pick up a different light. It's like if I was trying to drive to Atlanta to go see Andre, and I said, Dre, I'm driving a tractor, not a tractor trailer, but a tractor. And it's going to take me too long to get to Atlanta. You know what he's going to tell me to do? At least get in a car. You know what I'm saying? Don't ride a bike to California and expect to get there in 2 days. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, like that's insane. I'm looking at Jamal's comment here. He said that f-stop math was crazy. A photography savant. Yes, I'm sitting here like, this is why this dude is a master of light. All of that, technical, I tell people all the time, I don't care about none of that. I want to figure out how to get from point A to point B, and I'll do it through trial and error. Meanwhile, Ab has like the beautiful mind over here figuring it all out in his head and his light meter to be able to get there probably a lot quicker than what I would have, figuring it out with trial and error. But don't let the mechanics of it scare you guys, right? Because I see that a lot in me being an instructor. People let the mechanics scare them. Remember, Abbott's been doing this for like 20 years or more, right? And he definitely he enjoys the craft. He enjoys mastering of the craft, and he's definitely able to do that, because the watt seconds versus the watts and all that, like that is mind blowing, bro.
No, it's easy. And yeah, I come from a school where it was beat into me, right? Like,
Okay.
if, like, again, the more you can accomplish with your head, the less work you have to do with your hands. And when I learned photography, it was like, you need to memorize your f-stops.
Right.
You need to know, 1.4, 2.0, 2.8, f4, 5.6, f8, f11, f16, f22, f32, f45, f64, f128. You need to have all those memorized. Like,
Right.
there's just no excuse. You need to have from 1.4, or let's say 1.0 to 128 memorized. Like, you just need to know those. There's no if, ands, or buts. And then when it comes to shutter speeds, you just need to understand whole shutter speeds from, you know, 1 second to half a second to a quarter of a second to eighth of a second to, you just need to know those. There's just no excuse. You just have to know
Right.
them. And then don't forget them. you know? And then you just constantly have to work out. You constantly have to, you just constantly have to figure things out. Like even everything is changing. Photography is not like riding a bike. Like when I was photographing with film and I was using an RZ67 exclusively, just the sound of the shutter, everybody on set knew what was going on. So if you took a picture, you hear the big clunk, then you hear the advancing of the film, and then you hear like the ready beep of the flash go off. Everybody on set, even models, they knew like, okay, he's not even ready to take another picture yet. I can settle into my next pose. Nowadays, you get models on set and man, I think they're breakdancing, man. I'm just like, I haven't even taken a single picture yet, you know? And with digital, because they're so used to some people who just shoot their way through problems. And it's just like boom, 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 boom. Instead of communicating what they want, it's like, okay, I'm gonna let this model do 100 poses. Even if I don't like 50 of them, I know I'm gonna land on two that I like. So I'm gonna burn everybody's energy out. Versus, okay, this is what I'm going for. This is what I want to accomplish. Take a picture, boom, that looks perfect. Next, you know? Um, yeah, I tell people it's a great power to be able to communicate with the camera, but don't let the camera do all the communication. Talk to the person. Sometimes I think people take a picture just to get to the next pose, and it's like they're using the camera as a slot machine. Like, don't like that pose, hit the shutter, pull the slot machine, see what's next. Direct. I think that, like some people consider me to be a very technical photographer. And I think that through doing it so much, I mean, how if I've probably on average, let's say, done a shoot, I probably shoot 3 times a week for the past 24 years on
Man.
average. I mean, before I came here, I was doing a product shoot for Temba before I came in today. And it was just, one of our brand managers needed images for a presentation they were working on. It was a 2-hour shoot, come in, set up some white seamless, knock it out. So I'm just constantly shooting and you just start to pick up certain things. Like I follow a lot of fitness people and they talk about like squat technique. When you're young, you could just muscle your way through lifting weights, right? Now, when you get 40, if you lift weights wrong, you're gonna hurt something. you know?
Right.
So hopefully over all that time, you develop technique, but there are also photographers out there who just have really good intuition from building a lot of muscle memory and not needing to memorize a lot of technique or not being in situations where they need to overcome a certain issue with technique, but you still kind of learn it, and just because people can't define it, that's one of the reasons why I reread a light science of magic, the book everybody recommends but nobody reads. Because when I look at it, I'm like, oh man, I totally read that wrong 2 years ago. It really means this, like constantly studying this craft, man. That's why I'm excited to come to the Bokeh summit. When you're telling me that people are scared of hard light, I'm just sitting here like, man, like saying that you're scared of hard light is like, I don't even get it. I don't even, it's like saying you're scared of sauce. And it's like, guess what? Your life would be so much better with sauce.
Yeah.
There's so many different sauces out there. And you're just
Right.
thinking of hot sauce, but there's so many other different flavors.
Right.
And with hard light, there's so many different flavors of hard light out there.
True that. Yeah. Cause like um Lindsay Adler uses that Magna reflector.
Yes.
And I haven't, oh yeah, we talked about that. You were gonna send me the equivalent for a Bones mount because I haven't been able to find one that's that same size rather.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've been looking for like a
Wish that.
Bones mount equivalent so that I could go in and play with that. But
So
I
question, Andre,
uh-huh.
challenge. What do you want to do with it?
Right now,
Hmm.
I just want to play with it. Like you said a little while ago, photographers don't practice enough. I've been saying that for years that I personally do not practice enough, right?
Mhm.
Every job that I had up until, or every shoot that I did up until maybe about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago,
Mhm.
was always on the job. Like I didn't get it, I didn't go in and play around, even, in my studio,
Mhm.
big studio, go in, models on deck, right? And I just went and go in and go play, right? And I just want to be able to go in and go play, to be able to, work out the mind, build that muscle memory. So when I'm in a job situation, I can say, hey, oh, this is the concept that you want to do. Oh, I know how to do that with XYZ. I have the tools to be able to do that.
100%. I mean, take chess for example, which I think is even a better scenario than boxing I was talking about earlier. When I was growing up, I was a very good chess player. I was a very good chess player. And in my junior high school team, I didn't make the basketball team because we had a lot of really good ballers while I was growing up. I grew up in Chicago. And I was like, man, I still want to go on these games because that's where you get to go meet all the girls is we on the traveling games. Like that's how we get to other schools without having to have your parents drop you off. So I joined the chess team and I was really, really good at chess. And I was first table. I beat a lot of people. A lot of people didn't expect me to be very good at chess. And then it got to a point where I started playing people who just understood technique and strategy. And they were just dusting me every single time. And I didn't want to take the time to learn certain patterns, to understand certain techniques. And then you take all that and you place somebody in chess where there's a clock involved, and then you get smoked even further.
Right.
And so there gets to a point in your career if you're doing something professionally where you have to say, am I going to learn the technique so this can be my plan A? Or I'm going to keep kind of just using my intuition to get myself through this. And you may have to think of a plan B, you know? And some people are really, really fast lighting intuitively. Like I
Right.
would say, like Lindsay, she's very, very fast lighting intuitively. And she knows certain light shaping tools and how they're going to act. And therefore, she can quickly think of how they're going to solve problems. But it also helps if you're a photographer who has a certain style or vision that you get hired for, then you will find that clients aren't asking you to work outside that box. Me being a commercial photographer who oftentimes has to work across many different disciplines, I can't depend on having a style that so if I do a freelance job on the outside, people are hiring me more for my style. Working in-house, I have to work to whatever the creative is. So I can't be like, well, that's not my style. I'm not shooting it that way. It's like,
Right.
I just did a lifestyle shoot for Temba. I shot the entire shoot just using available light. I brought some strobes just in case, but shot the entire shoot using available light. It was an overcast day. It was slightly raining. Um, and it just worked out, you know? So I think it's it's really just important to understand light and not separate hard light from soft light, from strobes, from continuous light. Just understand light. I know I made that sound easy, but
Let me see. There was a question on Instagram. I want to go back to.
mm.
Henry is asking, how do you avoid work burnout and keep work interesting and exciting for you?
um I would say there's no way to avoid burnout as a professional photographer unless you're also independently very, very rich. Um I would say the way I would avoid I think there's two types of burnout. I think there's physical burnout, and you avoid physical burnout simply by eating better and working out, right? When it comes to mental burnout, I think that, and both of them require sleep, right? But when it comes to mental burnout, I feel as if though I define that as just not being passionate on a project. As soon as I show up, I'm thinking about when is this going to end? versus the shoot where I'm just like, man, I wish I just had 2 more hours. I wish I just had 2 more hours. I wish I just had 2 more hours. And that mental burnout, you just have to start taking jobs that aren't going to do that for you. If you have a job where, like, excuse me, if I shot a wedding today, the only thing that would be going through my mind is just think after you get done with this wedding, you're gonna have this huge paycheck and you're gonna be happier that it's done. I don't want to take jobs like that. I think on the day of I'd still do well, but I think if I went back to shooting a wedding today, I would think I would still probably need like 3 weddings to warm up. I don't think I could just jump in there and know exactly what's even going on, and even culturally, there's different types of weddings with different things that happen, different key moments. So I wouldn't advise somebody on being a wedding photographer, because I know that it would take me 3 weddings just to figure out what I don't know, and then a year of shooting just to get to a point where I feel as if though I'm at that level where I could give someone advice. I think that the greatest thing a photographer can learn is that this is not like riding a bike. And if I had to go shoot documentary photography, which I started out shooting a lot of documentary work, I was talking to my friend Nelson about this yesterday. When I shot a lot of street photography, I just understood the rhythm of the street. Like, I knew when someone didn't make eye contact, but they saw me and didn't want to have their picture taken, or somebody who was looking at me wondering, what am I doing? And I could easily approach them. Or if I saw someone who I can tell just wanted attention, and was going to be an easy person to photograph, or someone who I could simply catch by surprise and I knew I could get a yes. There's just, you were just in touch. You kind of have game, you know? And I think that as a photographer, you build up that game by practicing in certain genres for like an extended amount of time. Like, I feel very comfortable doing portraits. Um, but yeah, if I had to go and just shoot a wedding tomorrow, I'd be like, all right, let me talk to Andre. Let me call a few other people. Let me figure this out. You know.
Yeah, man. I like how you pointed out that even especially with weddings, like culturally things are very different. I shoot weddings of all cultures, and although within the cultures they're very consistent, they can be very consistent.
Mhm.
Um, you know, as a whole they're very different, right? So even with like Indian weddings, once you start to go to the different regions of the
Mhm.
country, the weddings are completely different. So even Indian weddings in and of itself are not the same. They can be different just all depending on, what region of the country they're from. So it's a good
100%.
point.
But to
um,
answer the question about burnout,
mhm.
I've never been able to manage it successfully. I would say there are always times I'm best when I'm working out and I'm eating well and I'm getting enough sleep. I would say then it never hits. But when life gets in the way and it prevents those things from happening on top of having a busy schedule, then it's like, how quickly can I recover? Because it's just gonna happen, you know.
So Henry is chiming in. He said, "As his best friend just picked up a camera for the first time at 40 and is in love. He's
Mhm.
worried about starting too late in life. Is there any such thing in photography as starting too late to be a pro?"
So I started my YouTube channel 14 years ago, and I posted my second video about a month ago. And so I have my first video. I was like, I'm gonna start this YouTube channel. I was doing a shoot. I had a behind the scenes videographer. It's funny. Everybody's hitting me up like, "Oh, I love that video you have is like has that vintage look." And I'm like, "Well, it was shot on mini DV because that's just what existed."
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like, when that video was shot, there were no digital cameras shooting to like digital medium. Like that was back when a memory card, 256 megabyte memory card cost you $200.
Right.
Like it was just a completely different, 256 gigabyte. But yeah, it was just a completely, no, that was megabyte. Yeah, they were like megabytes back then.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was just a completely different world. And so I am I'm starting a career as an educator right now, you know, right now. And I don't think I like when people think it's too late to start something, because it's like, great, I got fewer people, like there's less competition out there, you know. Even though I don't really believe in competition that way, but it's just everybody thinking like that. It doesn't matter if you're in love with it. Like, I'm in love with breathing, and I'm not ever telling myself like, is it too late to start breathing? It's like, absolutely not. It's never too late to start anything. If you want to start a professional football career at 40, try it. I'm sure there are some people out there who genetically can do that. Um, I definitely can't. There's probably very few other people out there who can, but you know, it's 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 never too late you can if you can deliver what's needed to perform at whatever level you want to get to.
That's what's up. One last question here. And by the way, guys, I forgot to mention, if you saw the email, then we are giving away a seat to the Bokeh Photo Summit sponsored by
Free seat.
Nanlight, right? And we do it by random name selection. We do it on some of the webinars, and the names that we pull from are based on whatever comments you left. So if you left a comment, your name is currently in this pool. So if you guys have any comments or questions, rather, definitely chime in. So one, we can answer your question, but two, so you can also be entered into this drawing here. But Lynette had a question earlier. She said, any suggestions on lighting products for creating a small home studio? Cost is, capital is, an option.
Lighting products to create a home studio. Oh, Jamal from PPA, glad to see you in here. And I saw Miguel. I just figured out there's a comments tab inside StreamYard, so I apologize. It's good seeing all of you. Man, is there how long? I hate answering this. Okay, I know how to answer this. I know how to answer this. My personal preference for lighting is Pro Photo for a lot of reasons. I think second to Pro Photo, I see people gravitate towards both Westcott and Godox. And I would say both of those are excellent options. I think that if you are not looking to photograph commercially, I don't know if there's a bad lighting option out there. I would stay with something that had a Bowen's mount, only because I feel like you're going to be able to find more less expensive light shapers more easily. Um, but I would say on a whole, go with any brand of lighting that's out there. Ellen Chrome makes great lights. Um, and they also make my favorite softbox ever. When it comes to hard light shaping tools, I really love Pro Photo. I think when it comes for bang for your buck and performance, it feels like Godox. So let's say let me back up with this one, right? Let's say you want to shoot primarily with lights plugged into the wall and you don't need battery power, right? Then I would say Godox probably has more options than Westcott. I think that Westcott has, they've shown up in a lot of places. They have great support. I know people there. They answer their email quickly. They answer the phone quickly. If that's really important for you, go with Westcott. I know when it comes to Godox, there's not like a huge customer service base besides other users.
Not a damn
Um, yeah. And I know if you end up wanting like a 1200 watt second light, Westcott doesn't offer that and Godox does, so it really depends. I would look at both those brands, but I would write down what you want the gear to do for you. If you want something that you can plug into the wall and is great battery powered, I know like the AD600 is great for that. If you want something that has a speed light that works well with it, Profoto speed light options start at $1,000, where Godox, you may be able to find a speed light option that works for $200. You know, a cost of a trigger for Profotos $400. Cost of a trigger for Godox is $69.
Right.
And if you're in a situation where it's like, well, I need 5 triggers for what? I'm not sure. Maybe you have multiple cameras, and it's like, well, maybe that's a better situation. So I think you have to really write down what all of your options are. If someone said, well, light shaping is the most important thing for me, I would say the Profoto Pro Series is the best when it comes to light shaping. If someone was like, well, I'm only going to be doing product photography, I would be like, well, Color probably has the best offering of like product photography lighting modifiers on the market today, hands down. So it really, do you need a light that has a great app that works with it? I think one of the things Chrome's done, Chrome has a great app that works with like all their lights, where you can like dial the power up and down, control certain things. So again, it really depends on what you want to accomplish. When it comes to reliability and dependability, look at reviews, see, talk to people who own them for over a year at least. There's not much an influencer can tell you if they just had a light for a month, unless it's broken. you know. Um, but that's a long answer, and I understand it. Like if I was going to buy a washing machine tomorrow, I would talk to someone who's like experienced about washing machines. So I don't think it's a bad question to ask about lighting. Um, I would say the brands I would look at: Profoto, Godox, and Westcott. There seem to be a lot of them out there. Chrome, I know a lot of Chrome photographers who are extremely happy with it. From Donna Maria, who was in here earlier, Felix Coons uses it. Friend Emily Teague uses it. They're very, very happy with it. Haven't had any issues. And it
John
gets,
Gress.
yeah, John Gress uses it. He does great images. So yeah, it really depends on what you're comfortable with. I think everybody has great options right now.
Um, Jay Banks chimed in and he was asking, "What is your favorite softbox ever?"
My favorite softbox ever just got discontinued. It was an Chrome Light Motive Square and Direct softbox. Why is it my favorite softbox? It's big, it's square, so it functions very, very good as a fill light. And placed right next to a subject, it works very, very good as a main light. And the fact that it's square, I could butt multiple of them next to one another to almost create like a 4x8 light source.
Right.
And if I was just working on a stage that was somewhat small and I need like a large fill light. And it's also since it's indirect, they're able to make it skinnier and it can still light pretty even. And it's relatively lightweight for its size, and it sets up really fast. So I would say that is my favorite softbox of all time. My favorite current brand of softbox are the Glow Adorama Glow Parasnap softboxes. Because the beautiful thing I like about these is you can swap speed rings. So I can bring a Profoto and a Bowen speed ring and use the same softbox on Nanlights or my Profotos, or if I want to switch to Chrome. So I love those, but excuse me, they don't get big enough to solve all the problems that I need a softbox to solve. But I would say right now those are my favorites until I find another one that I think is favorite. But sometimes the thing that frustrates me with soft boxes is when like the rods fall out and you're trying to like put them back together, and after 20 years you still look like an idiot because you can't like figure out what goes where. Um, and so the fact that hasn't happened with those, and I've had them for over I think 2 years now, and they haven't like started falling apart or fraying, or those are my favorites. And the
Yeah,
Ellen Chrome, they
that's why I like the Westcott Rapid Box series. The whole like I have soft boxes from years before I even became a photographer. Like
Mhm.
Calumet I lived in LA, and Calumet used to have a store in Hollywood. And back then I just had gear because when you shot, most of the photographers out there didn't have their own gear. You would have to rent it, right?
Mhm.
So it became cheaper for me to just buy gear for the photographer that I was working with to be able to come in and do the shoots that we were doing. But those rides were a pain in the butt with falling out. Now with the Westcott Rapid Box series, they've adapted that softbox as an umbrella where you don't have to worry about the rods. It does
Mhm.
have the different speed rings that you can change out for Bowens Mount, Pro Photo, Ellen Chrome, like all of that stuff. So yeah, those are clutch for me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's for any lighting manufacturer to win me over with something, they simply need to make the best version of that thing, and I'm gonna use it. Period. Like I'm looking for everything that can get me 1% better. You know,
Nice.
I think for me that's hugely, hugely important. Donna Maria, how you doing? I see you're still in here. I love doing this stuff. I talk too much, Dre. Like you can't have me on a live stream.
Sophia is asking, do you find hard light difficult with mature skin? I shoot boudoir and struggle with wrinkles and harsh light.
So want me to tell you the secret to photographing anybody is to make them feel beautiful, right? Um, and I don't think there's a problem photographing and showing skin texture if a person is okay with that. I think I think that if you come up with a mood board and you show them images of people that have been taken with hard light, um, and so they know where you're going. Like for me, one of the worst things people can do, and Dre, let me know if this happened to you, where someone calls you and is like, "Hey, Dre, what are you doing right now?" And in your back of your head, you're like, well, "I know what I'm doing, but what you gonna ask me for if I tell you?" And you'd be like, "Oh, I'm not doing anything." Like, "Oh, if you're not doing anything, can you do X, Y, and Z?" If you show someone where you want to go with an image and be like, "Look, I want to make you look like this," then or this is my vision, then I think they may be on board. There's going to be some people who just don't like certain styles of light, or they may say, I want, when I take these pictures, it's some people do have an unrealistic vision of what they look like, and I think that if you communicate it to people, what you're going for, and you execute on that important thing, you execute on that, then I don't think that you have an issue. I do not put yourself or your client into a box. If it and it let them kind of steer that, you know. Hard
Like
light may not always be appropriate.
100%. And I think it's something that is cool that people miss. And I missed this as well because
Hmm.
I didn't come up in photography or have anybody to like learn from along the way, right? um Especially with you doing commercial, you guys have mood boards, and those mood boards can even include posing, right? Where
Hmm.
we want to be able to do, or this is a pose that we're inspired by that we want to incorporate into this
Hmm.
shoot. But as I was learning about photography, this was years before I became a photographer,
Hmm.
it was almost like sacrilegious to have, poses like you're a photographer, you should know how to pose people, right? But people need to understand like it's okay to have, poses to pull from for inspiration.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people where I pose very intuitively. There are certain tricks, like if I feel like someone may be uncomfortable, maybe we'll start posing in a chair. Maybe I'll have them against the wall, places where they can kind of ground themselves. Posing is something that I do very intuitively. And I know there's people out there who have a lot of technique in terms of posing. Um, and again, when it comes to using lighting, I think that the strongest tool any photographer can have is a point of view. If you're a client, one of the strongest things you can have at your as a client that will benefit the shoot is to have a point of view, and I think that all these rules are meant to be broken, but sometimes you just have to give people the easy answer, and I think what makes exceptional photographers is when they learn how, like, in the fine art world, there's a lot within the artist statement to help you understand what the photographer's vision is. And then you can look at an image like, okay, based upon that, this is extremely successful, you know? So I would say that there are just some people who don't like their picture taken at all. And there's some photographers that don't know how to use hard light well. And knowing how to, to do what's appropriate, I think makes all the difference. But I would say take anybody that doesn't like hard light, and during the next sunset, 20 minutes before the sun is setting, have them put their face into the sun with their eyes closed and take a picture. My guess is you're going to love it. And my guess is they're going to love it too.
Nice.
You know,
Uh, let's see. Sheena is asking, how do you determine what power of light to use? Is it basically your choice for the look that you're going for, or what is a general start?
this is a very, very good question. When I'm shooting video, oftentimes the cameras I'm using have like a base ISO starting around 800. And so no, and again, this comes with experience. Let's say if I'm shooting an interview, right? So like right now, I have a light on myself as I'm doing this interview with you. I have a light on myself where, let's say, at ISO 800, if I'm doing an interview with someone, I want the light to be around f4 because there's not a lot of eye strain there. If we're doing an interview inside of a dark room. So I'm going to aim for, okay, what lights am I going to set up so that the lighting on the subject is about f4? Try to do an interview with someone where you're at ISO 800 at like f16, and you're going to see they fatigue very quickly. Another extreme version of this, if you've ever shot outside and a model is just like, you know what, I'm gonna close my eyes, tell me when you're ready and I'll open them. And then you open them, you take a few pictures and they close them again because the sun is too bright.
Right.
So there is a human factor in it, but then there's also just sometimes you need a lot of power for exposure. So I know that if I'm shooting outside on location and I'm going to have to work with different levels of sun, that I'm going to want at least 500 watt seconds or 400 watt seconds. The difference between 500 and 400 is negligible, maybe a third of a stop, you know? And I just threw that in there for brand to top out at 400 watt seconds. I don't want people like, well, he said 500, you're only 400. It's not going to be enough, you know? But I choose the power again, depending on the situation. If I'm wiping snow off my car, I have a brush. But if I'm wiping snow off the driveway, I have a shovel. And if I'm making money wiping snow off multiple driveways, I get a snowblower. And so it really depends on the goal of what I'm trying to execute. The biggest problem I see in the way photography is taught today is that it's taught to students in a way in which they need to digest things really quickly in order to see that they got some benefit. And the reality to being a good photographer is it takes a lot of time to really, really learn it and learn it well. And so again, I think these are really, really good questions, but I think you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to show and how do I get there? So that you can ask yourselves questions like, okay, I'm going to be photographing in this situation and I need to freeze action of this dancer. What light do you think is best for me to use? And then it's like, oh, for this, I would say you really want to use like the Profoto D3 or D2 that just came out, because by the time you get down to 300 watt seconds, you can be at like 1/3000th of a second flash duration. So it again, it really depends on understanding and knowing what problem that you want to solve. The first problem to solve with photography is to be passionate about photography. After that, learn the techniques that help you learn how to overcome certain situations.
For sure. Me was
Is a
there
light
one?
meter? I'm looking at these questions now. Now I'm in here.
You see the
Is
starred one? Look at the star tab.
the star tab? 1 second. Now you asking for too much.
Nah,
I'm
look at
joking.
where the comments are. The top right. You
Oh,
see, it's
starred. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm starring them in there.
Does native ISO matter in photography? I think native ISO absolutely matters in photography when it comes to maximizing the dynamic range and color that you get. But I'm going to say it matters 5 times less than it matters in video. And there are certain instances where native ISO in photography simply, for certain images, you wouldn't know the difference if I was at ISO 100 or if I was at ISO 1600. So I was going to say it matters far less in photography. Far less in photography, especially in today's cameras. I would say 10 years ago, far more. But now, I mean, I just did doing a shoot with the Fuji GFX2, and I was at 1600 all day, and I don't think the client would know the difference. I would still see the difference, but what the images would be used for, there's almost no difference. Is a light meter necessary, or is it better without, and to do trial and error finding the right exposure? Oof. This is one of those questions where I say every photographer should learn how to use a light meter. And after you learn how to use a light meter, you have to answer that question for yourself. If you are a street photographer, and this is very important, you may only have 2 frames to get an image, and a light meter may not be possible, and trial and error may not be possible. You may have to understand the situation and just be like, okay, I'm in full sunlight. My camera meter is telling me XYZ, but there's a lot of sky behind the person. So my camera meter could be lying just a little bit. Or I'm going to use spot meter, but the person is dark skin versus fair skin. They're wearing a black suit versus a white suit. Where do I want to put my shadows and highlights? I think every photographer needs to learn exposure. I don't believe you should be testing out exposure on your client. I would save all those valuable test photos to developing, to stylizing the lighting around your subject, not guessing what the exposure is. I feel as if though, if I can show the first picture I take of my client, if they look at it and it looks good, and then I tell them, okay, this looks great, give me a few minutes just to dial the light in even better, they're really excited at that point. If the first picture is like, wait a second, let me fix a few things, in their head, they're like, is it me? Is it my hair? Is it my outfit? Do I not look good? Am I ugly? The quicker I can build confidence, the more time it's going to get me on the back end. And that problem that you have of like, this person doesn't like being photographed in hard light. If they're overexposed and the light is really hard and the shadows are very contrasty, and people call that light harsh, then yeah, you may be in trouble from the jump. I think if you're a photographer, you should at least learn how to use a light meter. And this is coming from the person who manages this iconic brand. I need to be very transparent. I don't think a light meter is for everyone, for every situation. I do think as a photographer, you should learn how to use a light meter and say, you know what? This is for me. This isn't for me. This holds back my style of photography. I rather just do it another way. Because no matter what, everybody needs to use a light meter. Either you're going to use your eyes as a light meter, you're going to use your camera as a light meter, you're going to use your screen as a light meter, or you're going to use a handheld meter as a light meter. So you're not going to get away with just not using one. But find which one works better for you: your eyes, your screen, a handheld light meter, or the one inside your camera. And I would say you're going to be more successful using all four. And I'm very happy to say that I can use all four. And my eyes do steer me wrong sometimes. There's other times where the LCD screen was completely wrong. So, you know,
Right. Yeah,
what
you
is
and
the
I had
hurdle?
a conversation about a light meter a few weeks back about I've never used the light meter ever.
I would say at least try it out.
Oh, 100%. I plan to. I definitely plan to.
Yeah. A light meter is like sushi. It's not for everybody, but everybody should try it once.
Right. These analogies, bro. I thought I had analogies. You definitely have the analogies for sure.
What other ones we have in the store? What is a hurdle you have overcome on your professional journey? Um, I would say what the biggest hurdle is the question I always get and I always ask is how much do I charge for this? Right? Like that's always changing in photography, right? How much do I charge for this? Like when I started speaking at conferences, I was like, man, I don't know how much to charge for this. And I was asking other people, like, how much do you charge to speak at a conference? What's normal? How does this work? Like the your so in terms of like the professional hurdle, when it comes to like charging for a commercial shoot, it's like I have these people that I ask, I have this experience, I know this size client, and then I know how much money I need to make in order to make money. So I would say that is the constant thing to overcome is how much to charge because the value of photography is changing all the time. Um, but I started out early with so much confidence that I was jumping hurdles I didn't know were in front of me, if that makes sense. I think being young and dumb was a huge advantage to me. I had my own studio when I was in my early 20s in Hoboken, New Jersey. No air conditioning, no heating. We were next door to a wallpaper factory that sometimes would spill chemicals into our studio or
Whoa.
leaking radiators. There are plenty of rats, but it really made me and have respect for cats that can take care of that problem for you. But I just kept shooting, and I remember we had kerosene heaters. We had just figuring it out, but being so happy to have a studio and just working through it. Um, yeah, I think I was a lot of the hurdles I needed to overcome professionally. I think I was just too dumb at the time to even realize that they were hurdles because I was having so much fun.
Yeah, like that just that bliss, just having fun and not worrying about all of the small stuff.
Yeah. Do we pay people to get practice in? Yes. There's a lot of models who I have that I can test with, but there's some times where, like, I was doing this. I did a video on Adorama's channel about diffusion, and when I did that video, I brought in a friend and I tested out like 30 different pieces of diffusion on them because they weren't going to get any pictures out of it. I just wanted their time, and I needed like a good skin tone. Is it worth getting a light meter that can measure color temperature? If that's a very, very important part of your workflow, I think it's absolutely important to get. Um, but I would say it's definitely not a necessity, especially if you're a photographer and you're shooting raw. I think if you get like a color checker, like by Calibrite or Data Color, I
Yeah,
think that will solve a lot of your problems that you're going to run across in photography. For video, there are times where a color meter has saved me, but to get a good color meter, it is somewhat cost prohibitive. Um, so I would say it's a nice to have. If you're a cinematographer, I would say it's a need to have, especially if you're working commercially. Um, but it's something you can. If you need one, the jobs are probably paying you enough to where it makes sense.
for sure. Well, guys, that wraps up all of the questions that we have for today. Um, we thank Ab for coming out and coming to join us. We thank Nan
Thank you.
Life for sponsoring. And again, we are doing a giveaway of a free seat to the conference. Now, I do see some people, that have commented that are on this list who are already signed up for the conference. So thank you. If you have the standard registration, if you win and you have the standard registration, you will be upgraded to the VIP. If you are VIP, I will allow you to give that registration to someone else, right? For the standard registration. So we definitely want everybody to come out. We we are very passionate about growing this community, helping people understand what it is that they need to do to be successful, throughout this journey. Don't sweat the small stuff, like Ab was talking about before, right? Now, in the very beginning, if anybody's like me, I was very in my head. Like, I have people tell me all the time now, like, oh, you should do commercial photography. My biggest thing is I've never stepped a toe in that commercial world. I don't know what is standard practice. So even myself, I'm in my head about, oh, should I do commercial? What would I do? So on and so forth. So even myself, I'm excited to hear some of the other speakers talk so that I can learn as well. Learning as a photographer, like we're always learning. Like there is no, how did you learn light? Well, we're still learning light. Light changes. Every situation is going to be completely different. You should always be a student. As much as people, like to refer to me as a master of light, we just saw Beautiful Mind over here just run down some stuff for us that I would not have been able to do. My answer to you would have been, I don't give a damn about none of that. I'm gonna I'm gonna figure it out, right? But it would be nice when I can get to that level and be able to understand light in the way that he does. And by the time I get there, he's going to be even further, because educating ourselves on whatever it is that we're shooting and how to be the best at whatever it is that we're doing so that we can handle any scenario that we're thrown into is the most important thing. So again, Ab, thank you to
Thank you.
everyone for popping in. So let's do this giveaway. I'm gonna share my screen as always because
Oh, snap. And thank
I
everybody
don't
for joining in. It's been
right. I
dope.
don't select the names. I don't select the people. I let Google do it. So here we go. Lamont, congratulations.
Congratulations, Lamont.
Give
That's
me
my
a
sound.
shout. Oh, they're doing too much with all of that music. But
My bad.
oh, that was you. I thought that
It was a
was
button.
what you call it.
I
But
accidentally hit a button on my. I have a Rodecaster and it has all these sound effects built in.
oh yeah, 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 nice.
So.
I need to get one of those for some of these comments and stuff that people but again, Ab, we thank you so very much for coming out. We look forward to seeing you at the Bokeh Summit. If you guys have not registered yet, you can use code AB to receive $100 off of your registration. And we definitely hope to see you all there. So thanks again. And if you're not in the group and you're watching on some other platform, join the group. Be sure you're on an email list so you can know who's the next speakers that we have coming up in our Meet the Speaker series as we lead into the Bokeh Photo Summit in August. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you all in August. Later, guys.
Later.